and the Gloria Madrano podcast. How's everyone doing? Welcome. Join me. We are going to be in a series of lessons that are going to be pretty interesting. We're on the topic of sexuality, which has been very interesting. So I'm going to try to do this lesson as professional as I can possibly be. But as you know, I'm a silly girl, so you know, uh, I am, I tend to be a little bit lighthearted on the subjects, but just to start off with, this may um, trigger people who have been abused in their past. So if this is you, this is be aware that there could be some triggers as we go into self-awareness and the reality of abuse, things like that. Sometimes those repressed memories come to surface, and they will cause a little bit of disturbance. Disturbance meaning, you may cry, you may be hurt, you may remember things. That's what I mean. So this is not a counseling session. So I'm not a licensed counselor. What I am is a chaplain. I am I went to school for pastoral care and counseling. So I have qualifications in that from the University of London in England. So I have a background in chaplaincy and have been a minister for over 40 years. So just so you know, I see you guys there. Welcome. And so, you know, in these on YouTube, I can't like do a full blown counseling session or anything like that. But what I am creating on YouTube is an awareness, okay? Bringing things to surface and letting you realize that you're probably not the only one, because I don't know the statistics. I should have the percentages and statistics and things like that. But uh, generally, most of the time, not most of the time, most people have been abused in their childhood. Most people that you talk to on a daily basis, at work, at your churches, everywhere you do life, you can just expect that at least one of those people would have been abused in their childhood. So you're not alone, basically, is what I'm trying to say to you, is that on YouTube, what I am trying to bring across to everyone out there is that you're not alone in this journey in life, okay? You're not alone in your hurt. You're not alone in, the health diagnosis that you may have had. You're not alone in a marriage crisis. Maybe you've gone through a divorce. You're not alone, okay? And so, as we gather here each Sunday at 8 p.m., as we gather here together, sometimes we're silly. I'm funny, I'm silly, and most of the things I do in life are very serious things, okay? As a chaplain, you're dealing with end of life, people who are dying, okay? And it could be anyway. It could be, people that it may be natural causes, it may not be natural causes. You're dealing with, for instance, I was with a young man, and I went to the hospital to go see him. And he was a young, just like a punker kid. He was into punk rock and um, was involved in a car accident. And that car accident took the lives of two people. And he was just waking up from being in a coma, and the police were waiting for him as he was waking up. I was there with him, and I was able to speak with him and tell him, "Do you understand what is happening?" And he said, "No, not really." And so we all had to explain to him what had happened, and then he had to be taken away to prison, um, you know, where he was going to, get his sentencing and things like that. Um, so my life has some seriousness in it, a lot. So, but me as a person, I'm very silly. I have to find ways to, deal with the seriousness of life. And so, I'm funny. I like to do things that are fun and funny. Again, I told you guys yesterday as I was on here, I like to be creative in photography, and I like anything that has to do with a car. So I like to go to car shows. I like to, I'm a former motocross athlete. um you know I do not have a motorcycle, but I do look at them, and probably one day maybe I'll purchase one. But I want one that I want to take it to the show and show it, kind of thing, like an antique one or a classic kind. But that's just giving you a guideline as to the topics that I'm going to be sharing in the next couple of weeks. Are going to be kind of very serious. We went through some ones that had to do with forgiveness and things. Those are kind of like you're kind of gently going to the next level. And now we're there. We are there in the next level where it gets a little bit more serious. Okay. So hi, I see you guys there posting about your cars and what cars you like. Tell me, post. I'm reading as I'm teaching. I can see what you guys are saying. But because of the seriousness of this next couple of lessons, I'm not going to be able to be silly with you guys because this is kind of serious, okay? But I can see you guys, and I can see you posting what cars you like. So we are on the subject of sexuality, and within that subject, we talk about abuse, okay? And here are some of the general principles and the inventory that we will look at when we talk about the subject of sexuality. Okay, so I need to give you some of the not a guideline, but some of the things that will come up in the subjects that we're going to talk about. So one of them is talking about the definition of things. So, all right. So, I'll answer your questions after. Okay. I can see you guys posting questions and stuff. So here are the inventories. Again, if you're not 18 and you're in here, you're probably not going to want to hear this because it's going to be too serious for you. But if you're 18 and over, you're good. We want to talk about that. So, here's some of the definitions. The definition of illicit sexuality is anything outside of God's plan for us and our sexuality. Adultery is premarital sex and homosexuality are both illicit expressions of sexuality spoken against in God's word in Exodus 20:14 and 1 Corinthians 6 verse 9. Okay. Let's see what else here we got here. Okay. Until we renounce our attachment to illicit sex through confession, forgiveness, and repentance, we will continue to be attracted to and or practice illicit sexuality. All attachment to the sexually is illicit must be confessed, forgiven, and repented so that we can become free from the stronghold that Satan has on us. Sexual fantasies become illicit when it objectifies people and occurs outside the bonds of God's command, which is in Matthew 5:27, right? So we are going to dive into a subject about objectifying people because, we want to bring an awareness that people, humans, have feelings, they have emotions, they have hurts, they have joys, and they have dreams and plans and goals for their life. And we are not to objectify another person just to gain some kind of sexual favor from them. So we are created to be in connection with another human in the basis of marriage, okay? So that means we are trying to get to know someone very intimately. We're trying to get to know their dreams and their plans and the love that they have for life. What is it that they like? What do they like and what do they dislike? As far as, the way that they live their life. Do they like to exercise? Do they not like to exercise? What's their favorite food? Those types of things, right? How do they raise their kids? Do they take their kids to church or not? Well, my kids are grown, so they do their own thing. But when you have little children, and, or like, when you get into a relationship with someone, do they want to have children, right? Because you want to, so you're going to ask and get to know these questions. What are their values in life? Do they have a good character? Do they have a bad character? Who are they? Also, we want to remind people that, when you objectify someone, you need to remember that could be your child, So look at people like if that's your brother or your sister, if I'm getting in a relationship with someone, I don't want to look at them like they're my brother or my sister, but you know what I mean? You want to keep that purity about you is basically is what that's meaning. So keeping that purity about you, that you're not objectifying the person, right? That they're not a human. What you're doing is you're dehumanizing people when you do that. So you're looking at them as you're looking beyond their emotions and things. You're just looking at one element of that person, which is their sexuality. okay, what you can gain from that. So it becomes more predatorial, and it becomes more objectifying and dehumanizing. So you don't want to do that. And this we are, has as a society have become so um have swayed on into that area way too much. And so I'm here to create an awareness in that area, that we bring people back to their humanity, that that's a human that you're, looking at, and you might be on a really bad channel and looking at things that you shouldn't be looking at. And that basically, when you do that, you're dehumanizing that person who's on there, and that person is dehumanizing themselves, and why they got there is a whole other story. Who knows, but we're going to bring that as a topic. So sex can be used as an attempt to compensate for low self-esteem. It can even play into competition and better than or less than feelings, right? So people use that as leverage or control, and things like that. So, both men and women. So be aware, like, there are women out there that they control men by their sexuality, and it's a thing. So in general, men are particularly attracted to visual stimulation, such as watching those bad channels. I'm not going to say the word, but you probably know what I'm talking about. And looking at those things on those bad channels. So that is a real struggle for men. In general, women are particularly attracted to things that stimulate them mentally and emotionally, such as romantic movies and novels and soap operas, right? So, I've never been a soap opera watcher or any of those things like that, because I was always out doing sporty things. But, as a female, yeah, I like things that are romantic and, that kind of thing. But any exposure to illicit sex as a child is sexually stimulating, and there is some pleasure in this, whether in the attention received or physical pleasure. This is normal. But what has happened to you, if it's happened to you as a child, and in that child's mind, we don't understand what is happening as a child, right? So we just know that we've been stimulated, but maybe sometimes too soon, or probably too soon. And so we have now distorted thinking on that subject. We don't know where to place our feelings or thoughts or what, right? So we're going to talk about that as well when we get more into the lesson. Okay. So you're not responsible for that as a child, but you are responsible as an adult for your actions. Okay. As a child, if we are exposed to illicit sex in any way, we become hooked to it by the pleasure, excitement, or resentment it produces. Okay. As a child, it is normal to be curious about sex and to explore one's sexuality with children or the same age. When there is a significant age difference between those involved, the experience begins to veer towards abuse. Okay? So, most people have been in any one of these situations, okay? Most people, right? So we're going to try to bring some perspective to the whole thing. Again, this is just bringing an awareness. And sometimes we have distorted thoughts about ourselves in the situation, such as way too much shame. It's there. As an adult, we have convictions, we have guilty feelings and things like that. And but then it becomes there's a level of shame because those people in charge of us, our parents or caretakers or whoever that might be as a child, that when you came to tell them either that you were being abused or that where do babies come from, you asked all the questions, like where do babies come from, or what an innocent child would ask. Sometimes those caretakers or parents will shut you down because they don't know how to handle it, because probably they have been abused themselves. They will shame the child so much so that the child feels like they're just that they themselves are the bad, dirty person, right? And so they live with this bad, dirty feeling for most of their life, really, until finally they get some help, and all of the lies are exposed, and they can sort out who they really are, especially in Christianity, and then when they come to know Jesus. So, the Bible tells us who we are, that we are children of the Most High God, that He loves us, okay? And we can bring ourselves back to purity in Jesus Christ, okay? So, lies have to do with our belief system, especially on the topic of sexuality, okay? So some of you are now thinking about that I'm talking about lies. Some of you are now thinking about some of the lies you believed and some of the shaming that you believed, right? You think, well, a lot of us think that sex is really bad, like, oh, it's horrible, bad, it's secretive, and that kind of thing, but it is created by God. It's a beautiful, pure thing in the context of what God created it to be. It's beautiful, it's pure, it's meant to be. Like, we're meant to be sexual beings, right? So here are some examples of, okay, we're not going to read the examples because I already read the examples of that. So we want to move on to the next thing. But here are some truths. The truths are some of the things I just said to you, that God created us as sexual beings. That's God put that there. Those sexual feelings, God put that there, not the devil. Okay? But when we take it out of context and when we become predatorial, or we become, we treat another human as, we dehumanize them, and we become predatorial over them, then that is not in a healthy order. Okay, that's not a good thing. We dehumanize a person. We treat them as though they're just an object. Okay, to be taken. So, and that is not good. Or it's only for self gain. So if you're looking at someone who you like or whatever, you start the first part of the attractions. Yes, it's normal for, and I talk to people lots of times who are asking me funny questions about this. And I had to bring them back into perspective. So yeah, when you first become attracted to somebody, it's by their looks. So, that is okay. That's okay. You're going to look at somebody and you're going to be like, wow, I'm attracted. I like them, right? So, but it's when you then take it to the level at that point, and you take it to the level where you want to become predatorial and objectify the person as something you selfishly gain, not as something that you are pursuing to get to know. There's a difference. You see the difference? So you want, this may be somebody that you like their character. You want to get to know them because you're attracted to the whole of who they are, but you want to get to know them further. That's not objectifying them, okay? That's pursuing someone who you're just trying to get to know them as a person, okay? You are bringing them back to another human with feelings and emotions and dreams and goals and plans, okay? Not as someone that you are trying to gain for selfish gain. So, because men get this distorted as well. They everything that they look at is like, they're, it's like, um, it's attractive. They're like, it's all over the place. They're like, ah. So, um, it's basically when you objectify someone and it's for selfish gain. You want to get to know the person, and you're believing that that person, you're remembering and believing that person is another human being who is a person who is to get to know them, right? So, and that is something that's what you do. But when you don't do that, then you're predatorial and you're now dehumanizing another person. Okay, you don't want to get into the place of dehumanization where another human is not they you just look at them as oh, that person is that religion, so I automatically don't like them, or that person is of this race, so I automatically don't want to even look their way. That's dehumanization. Okay. um you know we have to remember that it doesn't matter what walk of life they are, whether they are something that we don't agree with, or in another religion that we don't agree with, or if they're another race, another race, another, if they're, you might be Mexican and that person might be black or white or whatever, Native American, and you were brought up, you know, um, that you're not going to associate with those kinds of people. There are those people out there that are like that. And so, you know, we have to remember that we're all human, okay? And that dehumanization is not a good thing, okay? Because that is where hate and disorder of country and communities, that is the tearing down of, having a whole healthy home or household, and the tearing down of a community, or, even the world. So we don't want to go in that direction. So we're not out to play games with people, humans, okay? We are to respect the humanity in another person, and even whatever they believe as well. You can't control what they believe, but you can know what you believe. Okay, you can know what you believe, and and yes, do we want to become protective when it becomes abusive? Heck yes. Yes. If there's a child who is, if there's some, basically not just even a child, if there's somebody who is weaker, who is being overpowered by another human, um and is under control or, being objectified or dehumanized, um, you know, we are to protect another human. We're to protect, people from being abused or taken advantage of. We're to protect the weaker and those who can't speak up for themselves. We're to protect that. Yes. So, don't get me twisted on what I'm trying to say, because I am very, I'm very protective. So basically, like my former life, I was a former motocross athlete. My dad was a biker, an ex-convict. Okay. He was a bad guy, good guy. So I have some elements of some stuff. I was a former boxer. So that tells you that I've been in a lot of fights, street fights and in the boxing ring. Okay. So, my son, he says, if you've ever seen the movie, The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, my son calls me Sarah Connor because I'm that mom that, paves the way for her children to have a safe future. Okay. And I will die doing it. Basically that's how he sees me or views me, because I am that aggressive in the way that I protected and led my children in the views of Christianity, in disciplinary, and in, allowing them to let them go into the future, but with a really God has a plan for your life. Okay. Kind of direction, right? So we want to remember to treat every human that we look at, that we don't look at them lustfully. Okay. So it turns to lust. You're going to be attracted to people. That's natural. Okay. God put that there. I had to tell another young man, God put that there so that you will go after, to pursue, to get to know to get to know a woman, or, to talk with her, to ask her out, and those things. God put that in you to do that. But it turns to lust when it becomes objectification, that you don't care about getting to know the person. You just want that one thing, and then you want to leave because you don't care. You're not really interested in them as a human being, right? So we don't want to get to that place. Okay. Sometimes that we're going to go, if we've been abused in our childhood, we're going to have moments of guilt. Okay. We're going to have too much shame. And, I already went over some of the things I said, some things that parents shame you is when you start to ask questions like, where do babies come from? Right. And you're just like, your parents will be like, shame on you for asking that question. And you're just like, whoa, I'm bad now because I asked that question. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to ask that question again because I'm a bad kid because I asked that question. That's normal. It's natural to get to know our own bodies, or, to be curious when your mom is pregnant and she's having a baby. You're like, well, how the heck does that thing grow in your body? As a little kid, you're asking these questions because that blows your mind. So, it is, make it safe for the next generation. Make it safe for your children to ask those, embarrassing, awkward questions. Don't make it's not supposed to be embarrassing and awkward. It's supposed to just be natural, Um, but our society has made it so horrible. Um, so in talking about sexuality, here are some things that happen along the way. Okay. When we get all like, distorted in our mind of how we view things, how we are, how we feel the shame of, having a sexuality, that we feel like, we are sexual beings, okay? And so I had a friend, from church, and everything that was had to do with any kind of sexual anything, and she was married, that it was so shameful to talk about. It was, oh my God, oh, I no, 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 and I was like, geez, you know, you're supposed to, like, you know, um, you know, how do you have your babies if you don't know anything about sex? How did you have your babies? Like, and so she would never, like, she just, like, if they just appeared one day, there are those people out there. Again, so ways in which we block things or divert things. Well, that's what we're going to talk about right now. So here's blockages. What does it mean when we say blockages? Blockages are low self-esteem, okay? Not accepting our God-given attractiveness and normal sexuality. Okay, so if you've been seriously abused in your childhood, you're going to have some blockages. Like, you're not going to be like, for instance, maybe a little girl has been abused, right? And before the abuse, she was happily wearing her little dresses and, twirling around like little girls would do, just twirling around and showing off her dress, and, just really liking her femininity, and having her little hair and little pigtails, or, curls or whatever. For my mom, it was curls. I was always in these big old curls. And, twirling around. But then after the abuse, you see that the little girl, is now shying away from the pretty dresses. She doesn't now, like, is kind of now hiding. And now, it's not the same. It's kind of like she doesn't want attention drawn to herself. Now she's become sort of withdrawn, maybe, even like, protective of her body. And that's what we mean by blockages. There's some kind of, abnormal, uh, way that we're kind of protecting ourselves, even maybe not knowing or realizing that we're doing that. Okay. Um, and so we become very uncomfortable with the attraction, especially in femininity, because of the abuse. That's what drew the abuse, we think, in our head, to us. So that's a blockage, right? So sinful behavior of any type, resentment, anger, control, criticism, dishonesty, etc., you know, is a type of, blockage. We hold on to resentments, you know, and a sinful behavior. We become a person who, becomes very dishonest, um, for no reason. There's no reason to lie, and then you find yourself just lying for no reason, because it's a kind of a protective mechanism. Um, so comparing ourselves to others, neglecting positive, caring behavior, and relationship skills. So that part becomes hard to do, because maybe you didn't feel protected, maybe you didn't feel cared for, and now it's painful for you to be in a situation where you're the carer, or you feel feelings of neglect and things like that. So that's a blockage. Okay, a diversion um, is a type of fantasy. A diversion is things that we turn to when we're uncomfortable or avoidant, or those types of things. So we turn to fantasizing. We turn to, a type of a type of lust that we turn to as well. We turn to watching those really bad channels. I'm not going to say the word, but we turn to romantic novels to escape, to avoid difficult a difficult life or difficult situations and things. We're trying to we are going into it's all a part of fantasizing, and it's a part of having a diversion. Because we're avoiding the main issue. We're avoiding the true topic that needs to be healed. And so it could be watching movies. It could be just watching movie after movie after movie. And TV as well. You unplug from the world and you watch TV. For us now today, it's the YouTubes, it's the social media, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it's the internet things, that we become avoidant on, and we're getting some kind of stimulation when we should be getting that from natural places, not from technology. you know um, we're now objectifying people as we watch them, as we scroll through things. We're now looking and judging, and "Oh, I don't like this scroll." There's the dating sites, and it's like, next, next, next. And the person on the screen isn't even human to you anymore. It's just a next, 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 next. Oh, this person looks good. Let's you're not even pursuing them. You've now objectified them, and now um you're what's it called? You're now like prowling after them. I forgot what the word was, but so those are that's it's yeah, it's very crazy. So we don't want to get into that. So I always say, yeah, it's good to take a break from social media. Just like I sometimes, every once in a while, if you'll see me disappear off of social media, like I will close down all of my social media. I forgot what you call the word now. I'm getting tired. I work a graveyard shift, so my brain kind of gets stuck. So sometimes I will close down all of my social media, everything, and I will disappear from social media. Okay. And, sometimes I'll do it for a week, sometimes I'll do it for a year, and sometimes for a month. But, if you've never done it, I encourage you to try it, because like it feels so good. You feel rested. You feel like, all the ads and stuff aren't coming in your brain. You feel like, again, there's like serotonin and all this stuff that, dopamines and things that come your way through all this stuff. Um, but those are things you need to get in a natural way, and like go for a hike in nature. I mean, if you're not a hiker, like I'm not really a hiker. Like I don't know why I said hiking. I am not really a hiker, okay? No. But I do like to go into the country and probably have some apple pie at some restaurant down there. To be honest, no, seriously, like, you know, I may want to walk the country village down there with a cup of coffee in hand. I am not a hiker. Like, don't let me fool you, okay? Um, so yeah, but I do like to get into nature, probably at a nature park or something or the zoo where it's safe and there's no bears, okay? But yeah, I like to think I'm tough and I'm Sarah Connor, but like when it comes to bears and mountain lions, no. So anyway, again here I'm going down the line, and then next week we're gonna even get even more in depth on this lesson. Okay, this is a crazy lesson. Okay, the other thing is inappropriate flirtation, which is I already went through that. I was talking to a young man. And he said, like, I feel like I lust at everything. I was like, well, I mean, yeah, you probably are, but you know, we all. I also don't want to shame him either. So, he was honest enough to come forward and say some things. And I said, dude, like, men are created visual. So, yes, you're going to feel like you're lusting. God has put it in you to pursue a woman, and to get to know her. We objectify the person. It becomes very lustful when we dwell on that, and it's now selfish. It's all selfish. And you're not trying to get to know them as a human being, what their likes or dislikes, or, take them out on a date or whatever. You're not trying to get to know them. You're prowling on them now. Okay. So that's kind of the difference, kind of, right? So, so I talked about that. Inappropriate flirting in the context of marriage, where you're married and you're inappropriate. That's when I say inappropriate flirtation, because we're gonna flirt. Okay, if you're single, you're gonna be flirting. Okay, um, so but in the context of marriage, you're married, and it's inappropriate to, uh, because flirtation is to get to know someone, to date them, or to, pursue them as, somebody you might be interested in. Um, but it's inappropriate to flirt with someone in when you're married, right? It's not appropriate. So, um, and that also ends up in extramarital affairs, right? So we don't want to get into that. We want to protect our home base if you're married, right? Um, so we talked about childhood blockages and things. We went over those. Um, so I'm trying to, you know, these lessons are, um, you know, usually done in groups, and where we meet together and we're able to talk, with each other. So I'm trying to figure out how to teach it on a YouTube, and so I'm learning as well as I'm going along on what works best. So I'm kind of scrolling. through the like big bulky context that I have already been gone through, and I'm moving into how I could just shoot out the information for you so that you could re-watch this or listen to this again, and there be an awareness of what you might be going through, and also to alleviate the shame that you might be going through, that there's hope, that God gives us purity. Okay. He doesn't look at you, even though we've done some really bad things. You may have, I may have. Um, and he doesn't look at you dirty the way that we may look at people. Okay. God isn't looking at you lustful the way that we may have looked lustfully at someone, right? He is looking at you with purity, and he can bring us back to purity. Okay. And God, through Jesus Christ, because Jesus is the one who died and paid the penalty for our sins, and through him we have been given grace. Okay. And love and acceptance into the family of the heavenly holy family, right? So he is bringing us back to purity, and I'm creating an awareness for that and for hope. Okay. Because some people for some people it's very, very serious. And so some of the questions are, we already went through that how, when you asked your parents a certain question about sexuality or whatever, how did they respond to it? And sometimes it's very shameful, it's normal for children to be curious. Okay. It's not bad. You're not a bad, dirty kid if you're curious. Okay. And then we talked about diversions. So we talked about diversions. We're going to pass that up because we already talked about that. Next week, we're going to talk about the word abuse, and we're going to go into a little bit of that. So this is a very, very, very long lesson. It's a very long lesson because this is where most of us like really get into, it's really getting in depth into like affairs and things like that. And so, we're gonna talk, I think, next week more about sexual inventory, which we did, but we're going to bring out childhood experiences, feelings, confessions, forgiveness, and then repentance. That's where we're going to go next week. Okay. We're going to go into that. We already covered abuse, and I think you guys understand that, when you're a child and you have been overpowered by a grown-up, you're not responsible for that. That's abuse. Okay. But there are feelings and emotions that come with that. And that comes into our grown-up years. And sometimes that could confuse us. It could, have us living in shame for the rest of our lives if we're not, if we don't know how to expose it, um, confess it, forgive it, and repent from it. So that is the key. That's how we get healed, okay? That and talking with a good Christian therapist as well, somebody who knows what they're doing. You just don't talk to anybody at church and start confessing, okay? That's just not safe. It's not healthy. Um, you know, find a healthy church to attend, one that has, people in place who know how to do this, where you're going to have a confidentiality contract signed that you feel safe to share because, you have some confidentiality, legally confidentiality, not in control confidentiality. I've been in that place before where, there was, it was as they made me sign the confidentiality agreement that benefited them, not me, them. And it was a control issue, and not a safe issue. It was not safe, and so that they prided themselves in having that confidentiality paperwork, but it was very abusive in the manner in which they made me sign that. So they made me sign it saying, you're not going to be able to go back to England and see your kids. I was like, whether I sign that thing or not, I am going to go and see my kids. That's it. You're not stopping me. That's not going to happen. So, so when I am serious about the fact that, I have been in the ministry for over 40 years. I have seen a lot, okay? And I do not, I do not down people or talk about people in a bad way. I talk about stories that help people to see some roadmap that, we're all just human. We all have issues, okay? I don't hate people, not even these people that were abusive. Am I angry? Yeah. Oh, yes. And did I listen to their abusive, controlling thing? No, no, no. And, because I'm grown enough to know the difference. So, I also have been around enough to find, and I still have, like traumatic, post-traumatic stress issues about, church leaders and stuff that have to do with that kind of thing. But I am so blessed, so grateful that I have had the opportunity to live long enough to see healthy churches and healthy church leaders. Okay. But I would not have seen that had I not stayed the course, or had I not gone to visit other churches or get to know those pastors. I would not have seen that. I would not have known that. Okay. So I had to have the trust enough, scared. I mean, scared, still scared. I still get scared. Okay. Obviously, there has been a lot of craziness that I've been through in those 40 years, okay? So, I have been objectified, okay? I have been preyed on. There have been predators. So, but I have hope. I have hope that there are good people in the world. I have hope that there are good church leaders. I know that there are because I have been in their presence. I have been to their churches, okay? I've been one of the pastors at one of the churches, church organizations, and I got the opportunity to be one of their pastors for a little time at one of their senior living facilities, okay? If you want to know a healthy organization, I can tell you a healthy organization, okay? Get into a healthy church, not a controlling one. There are those out there, but there are a lot of really good ones too. And we need a good church community to go to, okay? If you don't feel safe yet, come here, come to this YouTube and listen to what I'm teaching you, okay? I'm teaching you things that I know, I understand very well, okay? I've been teaching this for a long time, okay? And then I've also gone through some things that, I have been, healed of and go through and things like that too. So we are all just human, but I want to pray for you. Again, my name is Gloria and I'm here every Sunday at 8 p.m. So let's pray. Father, I just lift up your holy name. I thank you that you are in control. I thank you that you make a way where there is no way. You bring hope to the hopeless. You bring direction to those who don't have any direction. And we thank you that you can bring us back to purity, that there is hope for the world through people who are doing good in the world. There's hope for our communities through people who are doing good in their communities. And we thank you for watching over us and guiding us with your Bible, with the Bible that you have given to us to read, to see, to know. And so I just pray for peace over everyone who is listening. I pray for peace to those who, maybe you were the person who was the luster. Maybe you were the person who was the predator. And maybe you feel like you don't want that lifestyle. You want to humanize people. You want to be a good person. Maybe you were the person who was the preyed upon person. Okay? Maybe you feel overpowered and weak. God can bring you back to strength and purity and wholeness. Okay? For all of us. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with that. If you don't know how to come to Jesus, all you got to do is say, I need Jesus. I need God. And I accept that Jesus is the Savior. Okay? And I want to turn away from my sins. I don't know how. Just talk to God just honestly. I just say, I don't know how. I don't know how to do this. I just don't. This is weird stuff. I don't even know. But I want to come to change my life. I want to believe in God. I want to believe that Jesus is real, and that he paid a debt for us so that we wouldn't go to hell, so that we could have hope. and change and live a good life, okay? That's all you got to say. There's no formula in it. And then just call upon God. Just say, God, where are you? Many of us who have come to God, it has been through, some have through visions and dreams. Others just called and cried out, God, I need you. Okay. Others, so many different ways. Others came, a friend invited them to church and they heard the gospel message and they accepted Jesus there like that. For me, I was at home and I came to God through visions and dreams. I really did. I really, really did. It's hard for me to talk about that because, it weird, people get scared and stuff. So, but yeah, God does, some people do come through visions and dreams, and so, he, all you got to do is ask God to help you. He's there. Okay. I am not God. I'm just a Gloria. I am just a Gloria, and I'm just giving you a good message, a message of hope. Okay. So I have to go to work. I work a regular job. It's a graveyard shift, overnight shift. It's late, it's late, a late night shift. So, I am sleep deprived. From Saturday to Sunday, I get no sleep. And I still come on here every Sunday and I don't get paid. Okay. So just so you know, I'm not taking money from anyone. This is me, sleep deprived, Gloria, bringing hope to the world. All right. I love you guys. I'll see you next week. And possibly, maybe I do surprise stream ins throughout the week sometimes, so I might surprise you, and jump in here and do some shout outs because I know you guys like the shout outs. So I was not going to be able to read some of your messages, but I see you all saying hello and I love you all. Okay. Thanks for being here and bye for now. Bye. I love you. See you later.